And yes, we are. You know what I'm going to say, don't you? Those of you who are already in, we are live. Yes, we are live. Good morning, good morning. Oh, I've got an itchy nose. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. Does that mean I'm going to be vexed? I don't think so. No, definitely not. Absolutely not. It is March the 26th. How did we get there? Next week is April. How is that possible? How could it possibly be April? I went out this morning first thing to look at my magnolias. Oh, I'm so excited. I've got so many buds on my magnolia bushes. There are altogether, there are 10 of them. And they are laden with huge buds, which means keeping my fingers crossed that we're going to have some absolutely beautiful flowers. I promise I will photograph them, and we'll put them on Instagram or Facebook or all of the above, maybe. Oh, excuse me, I've got an itchy nose again. Right. So before we begin this morning, first of all, of course, I'd like to say good morning to Gregor, who as always is standing to my right side. I can't stop itching now. And I'd like to say good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Rosemary. Boy, it's good to be having a Saturday.
Is it?
Yes, the
You
work
mean,
week done.
yeah, you mean you don't have to get up, but you do really, don't you? Because we've got story time, but you can sort of chill out and not worry too much, and your head is in a good place because we love story time, don't we? So I'm always up for story time. I really do have an itchy nose. Maybe I am going to be vexed this morning, but I'm going to try very hard not to be. March, story time. And I do have a story for you. I think I mentioned on Thursday, because on Thursday morning, if I just remind those of you who watched on Thursday, and for those of you who didn't and are coming in new to this, we were talking about mediumship, and we were talking about my neighbour, my lovely neighbour next door, who has retired about 18 months ago. And we were having this conversation. I was asking him how his retirement was going and so on. And he looked at me and he said, "So when are you going to retire then? It's time, surely it's time you retired." And I looked at him, I said, "Me? I'm not, no, sorry, no, that's never going to happen." And he said, "Oh, come on, Rosemary, you've got to retire sometimes." And of course, listening to him saying that made me realize once again, because this has happened to me since forever. Um, I know that it's so easy for people to think that it's my job. And it is my job. And I love my job. And I know that I've got the best job in the world. And I know that what I do is the most amazing thing ever, ever. And I know that I must be one of the luckiest people on this earth. Having said that, this is really much more than a job. This, what I do, what we're doing here today, talking to people who have died, connecting with the spirit world, all of the above, is so much more than a job to me. It's not what I do, it is who I am. But people have different ideas. Now, gone are the days when if you said you were a medium or a psychic or whatever, people imagined, see, you've got the gold earrings on, just to make a point. People imagined the big gold earrings and the headscarf and the crystal ball. People imagined sort of like the gypsy and the fairground and all of that thing. And then if you said that you were a clairvoyant, again, people imagined that you were, that you were in some countries an old crone, but people imagined you wearing the headscarf and the crystal ball and gazing through the crystal ball, and it's kind of spooky and exciting and all the rest of it. And or people imagine that you must read palms or deal the cards or read people's cards and so on and so forth. So people have an idea of what they think that someone like me is, and of course I do not fit the criteria at all. I don't remember if I talked about this. You have to remind me, Chris. I'm not sure if I talked about it yesterday or Thursday, but I remember being invited. I was in England at the time, and I remember being invited to a very special event in California. And of course, they were told, that I was a medium. They wanted to know all about me. It was a very big organization, and they had speakers come from all over the world. And so they said, yes, they'd like me to come to their event, which was I think it was a week or 2 week event. I'm not quite sure now. And just before, just before I stepped on the plane, almost, the friends who had organised this for me and who were going to be my hosts while I was there called me and said, "We've got a slight problem, Rosemary." And I said, "What's that?" And they said, "Well, what they've done is, usually speakers, they have a room, they have a time. Sometimes they speak once in the week, sometimes they might speak 2 or 3 times in the week. Well, they've got you sitting by the pool so that when people have finished listening to the speakers, they can come and maybe, have their cards read or their palm read by you." Not going to work. And I almost didn't go. And then, because there was this mix up, they decided, oh, well, yeah, let her come anyway, and she doesn't have to do anything, which is also not what I wanted. I wanted to go and I wanted to work. And the idea is you want to share your gift with people. But anyway, it worked out in the end. But that is people's perception. Still, in some ways, it's people's perception, although we have so many shows now and so many, TV people doing this stuff. And so people have perhaps a little bit better idea of what someone like me does. But still, there are these misperceptions and misconceptions about who I am and or what I do. So I thought I'm ready to get into my story now, Chris. What do you think? Have people come in yet, do you think?
People have come in, but I want to read you 2 comments before you start.
Go ahead.
Lorraine says, "Good morning and never, never retire. Continue to be who you are." And Mark says, "You are a gift our world appreciates, and I feel that what you do for work, you love. So when you
Huh.
love what you do, it's not really work at all." And now he's laughing because he's retiring in 14 months.
Oh, good. Well, I'm never going to retire. Just to ease your minds. The only time I'll stop doing what I'm doing is if my mind goes. Some people think it's gone already. Do you know that? And there are those moments when I do wonder myself, when you have that, we don't call it Alzheimer's, we call it old timers. Those old timers moments when you can't, you're going to say something, you can't remember what you're going to say, or somebody tells you something and the next minute it's gone out of your head. But you see, I'm comforted by the fact that that was happening when I was in my 30s and 40s. So, so just because it happens now doesn't mean that I've got Alzheimer's. So the only time I will, stop doing what I'm doing is if this goes, we keep our fingers crossed it doesn't, or when I'm, sort of making my way heavenward. I think they're the only 2 things that will stop me, because again, and it's very hard for people, and I listened to what Mark said, it's your job and you love what you do. No, 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 it isn't my job. I do work at it, so I can see why people would think that it's my job, but it isn't my job. It's something that I am compelled to do because it's who I am. It's innate within me. And it simply is who I am. So, but I thought I would tell you a little story, maybe a couple of little stories about being, let's say, bushwhacked or sidetracked or whatever. Bushwhacked really sounds good to me. And I do remember, so here we go. Once upon a time, many years ago, people did have those perceptions and still do have those perceptions of, the gypsy in the fairground with the crystal ball. And before you think I'm disparaging that image, let me tell you, I have come across some of those fabulous Romanis with their crystal balls who really know what they're doing, and they're really, really good. So I'm not being disparaging, but people do sort of get things muddled up. They don't quite know what a medium is. What is a medium? And they immediately go to thinking of, you know, the Ouija board perhaps, or the tarot cards, or you know, any kind of cards. The runes is another one. But they immediately think that, you know, it's more about fortune telling than it is about anything else. I suppose that's what it is. So here I am, it's March, so we're in March. I'm telling you a March story, but we're going back a few years for this. So it's March, and I'm invited to, sorry, I really am going to be vexed, aren't I? It's March, and I'm invited to a March ball, or I think they called it the March Hare Ball. And a lot of people in England, a lot of organisations have the March Hare Ball because it's just a fun time. Spring is coming, Christmas is over, let's get together. It's time we had a bit of fun. And so there I was. I had to get a ball gown, and I ended up borrowing a ball gown from a friend. You know, one of those really sort of poofy things. You know, the full skirts and a little sort of top, no straps. You know, the kind of thing. Very, very, very nice. It was a very, very nice dress. Anyway, so we all get dressed up, and I go with some friends of mine, and we all get dressed up, and we have a table, and each table has roughly 12 people around it, and it's a dinner, and of course there's an open bar, and there's dancing and all of that stuff going on, and it's just as you would imagine a ball would be, and it's being held in one of those huge tents, marquees. So you know, you don't have to say anything. You know how it is when someone walks in and you look at them and you think, do I know that person, or have I seen that person before? And then people start talking, oh yes, that's so and so, or that's such and such. Anyway, so word, for some reason or another, I've no idea how it happened, because I certainly, when I go out, I don't advertise what I do, unless of course I'm doing an event. Word got around that you know, that's that that's that woman, and I am famous around the world for being that woman. You know, that woman. You know, that woman who talks to dead people, and people, you know, used to know me all over. Well, so many places in Europe, people would refer to me. Oh, you know that woman. You know, yeah. And you could go into a bookstore, and somebody would go into a bookstore, and they would either not remember my name or would not quite get the name right, and they would say to the bookstore owner, oh, you know, that book by that woman who talks to dead people, that woman who talks to dead people. So anyway, so here I was at the ball, minding my own business, having a blast, and at one point every other person on my table was either up at the bar or dancing or doing something. So I was sitting there by myself, and again enjoying myself, watching. I'm a big people watcher, just enjoying myself thoroughly. And two girls came over from another table and sat down at my table, and didn't even bother to introduce themselves or say who they were, but they just said, oh hi, you know, we're told that you're a medium. And I sort of, I'm in the middle of a ball, I'm enjoying myself thoroughly, and they say, oh, we told that you're a medium, and I smiled and said yes, and just sort of turned slightly so that I didn't turn my back on them, but I turned so that they could see I was watching the dancing and so on and so forth. And so they, without any preamble, one of them said, okay, then go on. Sorry, what? Oh, you know, go on, do me. And of course I knew what they meant, but I also know how rude they were. So I wasn't going to play the game. So I said, you know, well, if you don't mind, you know, I'm watching. I've got a friend coming in a minute, and no, come on. you know, that's what you do, isn't it? That's what you say you can do. Now, remember, I'd not met these women before in my life. I didn't know who they were. Come on, that's what you say you can do. Well, if you can do it, prove it. You know, a lot of people like to say that to people like me, don't they? You know, they really love, you know, well, come on, then I don't believe in what you do. So many people have come up to me over the years and said, I don't believe in what you do, so prove it. And why would I? So my answer then is, well, you know, I don't worry about whether you believe, it's whether I believe, and I do. So I don't need to prove it to anyone else. And so I tried to be nice. I really did try to be nice. And I kept the smile on my face. And the more I sat there and did not do it, the worse they got, until at one point, one of the girls said, you've got a responsibility. That's what you do. You've got a responsibility to tell us what we want to know. And it's just so appalling that, you know, people think that way. And I just, by this time, I'd had enough. And I looked her right in the eye and I said, I have a responsibility to myself, first and foremost. And I'm here on a night out. I don't know who you girls are. I don't know what makes you think you can come and sit at my table and harass me, but you need to cut it out. And that's when they got really mean and really nasty. And fortunately, at that moment when it was getting really out of hand, a friend of mine came, who was in my group, came up to me and said, sat down and said, everything okay here, Rosemary? And I said, well, just if I can say, they don't belong at this table. And he just looked at them and he said, did you hear what she said? And you know, I had my knight in shining armor protecting me. That was one incident in so many incidents. It's your job. You are supposed to help us. That is what you're supposed to do. And people can be so rude, and I think it's the perception that people have that somehow either we are fake, because after all they don't believe it, or if we're not fake, we owe them the responsibility to prove to them that we're not fake. I think there are so many people, and especially years ago, I'm not sure if it's quite so bad now. It's not so bad for me now, because you only get one look from me, and that's it. People don't usually attack me. Occasionally, on occasion, they will attack you. And they will either say you're a fraud or you're a fake. And what can I say to that? You don't know me. You don't know who I am. I remember one guy coming up to me in the middle of it was a big workshop, and he stood right in front of me, and he was very arrogant and, you know, folded his arms, came up in front of me, and he said, I just want to tell you, I don't believe in anything you say, and I don't believe in what you do. And he was so taken aback because I smiled at him and I said, oh, that's okay, as long as I do. And I just walked past him. You know, I find that this misconception, it really does need to be put right over and over and over. And throughout the generations, I think, you know, younger people come up, people don't quite know who I am or what I do. Or I shouldn't say I, but people like me. What do we do? So, do I tell fortunes? Not entirely, but I do feel sometimes like a fortune teller, because it is possible sometimes to see and to help and to guide someone with their future. So I guess that would be a yes. That does not make me a fortune teller. Do I talk to dead people? No. Are you all thinking, wait a minute? Of course she talks to dead people. No, I don't talk to dead people. I talk to people who we perceive as dead, but who I know have survived death and are continuing on with their lives. So no, you see, I know the phrase is, she talks to dead people and it catches people's attention. But the truth of the matter is I don't really talk to dead people. I talk to people who have passed into the spirit world. We perceive them as dead, but they are not dead. So my role is to, help people to connect with their loved ones who are not dead. So we should probably have that, the phrase "she talks to the not dead" instead of "she talks to the dead." What else do I do? Well, many of you have seen the bottom brick, and you can see that, I think a person like myself is a kind of a therapist, a kind of a psychiatrist, a kind of a psychologist. I don't know what we are, but certainly one thing that we are is we are far seeing. We're able to see beyond the normal vision. What does clairvoyance mean? Clairvoyance means seeing further than the ordinary vision. What does clairaudience mean? It means hearing further than the ordinary hearing. Clairsentience means being much more aware and sensing beyond our normal senses. Non and non it goes. And most people have one of these attributes. They will either see, they're either clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, whatever they are. They have, they have their abilities are honed into one of those things. With these girls sitting at the table, let's get back to this story of the March ball. With these girls, had they not come at me so aggressively, had they come at me and said, "Oh gosh, we're really interested in what you do," I probably would have talked to them. I would have probably been much nicer. And they then would have seen that not only am I clairaudient, clairvoyant, clairsentient, I'm all of those things and everything else rolled into one. So I see, I hear, I sense, I'm aware in every single part of me. This I'm trying to describe to you. This is not a job I do. This is what I am. This is who I am. So, am I a teacher? And I think probably above and beyond all else, the role of teacher comes into every single part of what I do. Because here I am, I'm on a show and we're chattering away. And we did our off the cuff yesterday and it was fun. And we were talking about movies, we were talking about all sorts of things. But every now and again, you hear me say something that either teaches you something or teaches us something. Because sometimes Greg will say something to me and I think, oh, and then I learned something just as much as everybody else. But I think the teaching role sort of covers the whole gamut of what I do. I'm a healer. So I remember going into the children's home. It was a children's hospital. I remember being asked by a friend of mine to go to take a look at her daughter. And I can remember my daughter Samantha, then she would be, I don't know, 14, 15 years old, something like that, saying, could she come with me? And at first I said, absolutely not, because I was afraid for her. She handled the situation better than I did, by the way. But we were going into a sort of a hospice care where every single one of the children in this place was severely, and I mean severely, disabled in one way or another. Physically, emotionally, mentally, you name it, in every way. And some of the sites were, I hate to use the word grotesque, but in a way they were grotesque because these are children and the things that happened to them and the way that, things happened, the way that they looked was just beyond imagining. But I went, and some of you have heard me tell this story before, but when I first went, although I'm a healer, very brave in all of those things, children are something different, aren't they? And for me, it's so hard to see children who are in these situations. And I was sitting on the sofa. I'd seen my friend's daughter talk to her, talk to the nurses, and had my visit. In the meantime, my daughter was off, sort of exploring and talking to kids, and finding a way through the hospital. And I'm sitting on the sofa, and the ugliest kid in the world, I have to tell you, I know what I sound like, the ugliest kid in the world, I can tell you, came shuffling up to me on his bottom. He was wearing a pair of stripy pajamas. His face, how can I describe his face? His face was sort of set to the side, very lopsided, very distorted, very misshapen. His body was crooked. He couldn't walk. His legs were somehow curled under him. His arms and hands were obviously very distorted, very, very crooked. And to top it all off, to top off this picture, he had bright carrot red hair sticking on top of his head. And he came up to me, shuffled on his bottom towards me, and he came up to me and he made these sounds, and he was drooling, and he made all these really weird sounds. And then somehow he put his thumb into his pajama jacket and he yanked his pajama jacket open and looked at me and started making all these weird sounds. And I had no clue what to do. I was young at the time, is my only excuse, but my daughter was much younger than me and she was dealing with everything. And so I just pretended that, that he wasn't looking at me, he wasn't doing anything to me. And one of the nurses came up to him and said something to him and did up his pajama jacket. And then he did the same thing again to me, making all of these weird noises, trying to get my attention, put his thumb into his jacket and he yanked again. And again, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm not sure what to do here. And a nurse came by behind me by the sofa, and in a very, well, sort of judgmental, she was obviously protective of this little boy, right? But to me, he was just this ugly, awful creature. Anyway, and she sort of, as she went by me, she said, if you just do his pajama jacket up, love, he'll leave you alone. And, ooh, that was tough. That hurt. The tone of her voice told me everything I needed to know. So basically, sit up straight, man up, and get on with it. So I reached forward very gingerly, I have to say, and started to do up his pajama jacket. And I noticed as I was doing up his pajama jacket, his eyes were very piercing. Out of this awfully ugly head, his eyes were very piercing and very strong, and he was looking right at me. And so I did up his pajama jacket and I said, there you go, off you go, and hoped that it would disappear, go bother somebody else. But no, within seconds of me doing up his jacket and hoping that he would leave me alone, he grabbed his thumb into his pajama jacket again and he yanked, and all the buttons came open, and he made this awful, weird sound again. And it was then, for the first time, that I actually looked at him, really looked at him. And suddenly there he was, this beautiful, damaged little boy. And his eyes were full of laughter. And he was teasing me. And he was trying to get me to play with him. And I suddenly looked at him. I didn't see the ugliness anymore. I just saw the child. I just saw this boy trapped in this awfully ugly body. But still he had humor in his eyes. Still he could smile. Still he could laugh. He was definitely, probably the very first earth angel I ever encountered. And I just looked at him and I smiled and I said, oh, I see. You want me to play with you, do you? And I reached down, and this time, as I did up his pajama jacket, my hands were gentle, my voice was gentle. Remember, Grey Eagle says your world needs gentleness. Why did it take me so long to be able to do that? We're all afraid, aren't we? We're afraid of something different. We're afraid of something new. We're afraid of something unusual. This is why people come and attack some people like me. Well, it's your job, isn't it? Well, prove it. Because they're afraid. We're all afraid of something that is different or something that we don't understand. And there's this beautiful little boy who just wants to play. And so I sat there for quite a while he kept undoing his jacket, and I kept doing the buttons up again. And somehow or another we built up a wonderful rapport until the nurse came and took him off to bed. I then got off of the sofa and decided that I would take a walk around, perhaps go look for my daughter. And I ended up in a ward with probably about, I'm going to say about 10 or 12 beds. Every single child in this ward was so seriously disabled as to people were just waiting for them to die. And as I walked in there, I could hear this child's cry, this on and on and on, over and over again. And I turned my head. There's a little boy, the teeniest little thing you ever saw. He looked to be probably 6 months old. It turned out that he was 4 years old. And the nurse came in after me, and I went to the bed, and I reached for this little boy's hand, and that he held on to my finger. And the nurse said to me in a very quiet voice, whispery voice, he hears everything to the extreme. So if you drop a pin, he hears it as a loud clang. Every noise, everything that happens, he can hear. He's oversensitive to the point where he can never sleep, and he just cries like that all day, every day. So I stayed by this little boy's bedside, and he held on to my finger, and I began talking to him very, very softly. And at one point he turned his head to the side. He was blind, he couldn't see, he was just, but he could hear. But when I talked to him very, very softly, very, very quietly. And he turned his head to listen to me, and you could see that he stopped this sort of crying sound. He stopped, and you could see that he was listening. And then I began to sing to him very softly, very quietly. I began to sing a lullaby to him. And the same nurse came back in a while later, and she stood to the side listening to me singing to this little boy. And she said to me afterwards, she said, I've never been here when he stopped crying. I don't know what you did, but can you come back and do it again? Our world needs gentleness, doesn't it? We have two women who think it's their right to harangue me. Maybe they've had a drink. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt, shall we? Maybe they're having a drink. Maybe they hoped they would meet the love of their life and it didn't happen to them. Maybe they were so disappointed they thought they could come and just be rude to me. Then we have these children on the other side of things who expect nothing from anybody and who are defenseless. Where would I rather spend my night, I wonder, in that home for those children or at the March ball? Thank goodness I don't have to choose, because I get to choose, I get to go wherever. And I do get to give people healing, and I do get to see some awful things, and I'm grateful for it. And I do get to be out and about and have people say awful things to me, and I'm grateful for it, because wherever you go, if this is who you are, not what you do but who you are, if this is who you are, It's all part and parcel of the entire experience. And guess what? I'll take it. Um, the end. What a weird story. We went from all sorts of different places looking at things from different angles. But that is the end of my story. By the way, the little boy's name, that little boy who laid in the bed who I sang to, his name was Jonathan. It's a long time since, probably 30 years since I was in that children's home, and I still remember Jonathan to this day. I wonder, I'm sure he's in the spirit world. I know that he didn't have long to go. I wonder if he's anywhere listening to us, and I wonder if he knows that as an earth angel, he made such an impression on me. Okay, Chris, how are we doing?
We're doing great. People were sending in chats all during your story, so they may not match up exactly as to how you ended your story. We're going to
Oh,
play
that's
catch
fine.
up, okay?
Yeah.
So Rhonda started with "We need you" when you were talking about uh, who you are and what you do. She's saying we need you. Judith says, "Didn't we say, I think during Halloween when we had spooky night, that we were going to have a ball and get dressed up for a special group night?"
Oh my gosh, we did, didn't we? Oh, yes.
Maybe we should have a ball and an evening with Rosemary.
Well,
That would be quite the event.
I'm actually thinking it's my birthday in May. Why don't we? And it's the end of uh, the 25th years anniversary. We then go into 26 years, of course, but it's the end of the quarter century that the book was published. So maybe we should figure something out, Chris. Are you going to come? Shall we get dressed up?
Let's talk about that.
Okay, works for me.
Uh, both Maggie and Cheryl were commenting on the women who showed up at your table and how they were so rude and you don't owe anyone anything.
No,
Um,
I get.
and Cheryl saying, additionally, they just demand that you start reading them. So do me, Rosemary, just being cheeky.
Well, I wouldn't say cheeky. I'd say rude. Absolutely rude. I suppose there are so many people you know, who just believe it's their right, don't they? We believe. I think, since the advent of the let's see, the unions. Not that I'm disparaging the unions, because thank goodness for them, because otherwise, children would still be working in factories and down the coal mines. But since the advent of, the sort of, we have rights, and of course women had rights, so we've had to fight for rights. But I think over the last, 2 or 3 decades, it's people have had an attitude of, it is our right. And so often things are not our right. We have to earn things, we have to work for things. People sit at home and say the government is our right, for the government to see to us. No, get off your butt and go to work. So I think it was a case of it's our right.
Judith says, "Oh my goodness, how bold and rude those girls were. I'm so
Yes.
glad you had a champion. You didn't have to hit them with a brick."
Right, yes, absolutely. And it was nice to have a champion. I I I think maybe one day we should all start to think about the people that we've had in our lives that have championed us, because champions come from unexpected places, don't they? They don't necessarily come from where you think they're going to come from. We talked about Jen and her bottom brick exercise, which we did last Wednesday, Tuesday or Wednesday.
Tuesday.
Um, and her mother never championed her, never defended her, never stood up for her. And, that can be damaging. But, champions often come from unexpected sources and unexpected places. So maybe we should start to think, maybe we should start to sort of have a, you know, uh, a show where we're all going to be talking about the champions, the people who stood up for us, the people who defended us, the people who, you know, we that are really meaningful in our lives. I can think off the top of my head of two people, my Auntie Loseby, and many of you have heard the story of my Auntie Loseby, who was my champion and defended me, and Anthony Booth. Where are you, Anthony? Are you still around, my darling? Anthony Booth from the city of Leicester in England. If anyone listening knows of Anthony Booth, oh, he was my champion and I shall never forget it. Anyway, go ahead, Chris. Keep going.
Cheryl says, guess it would not be right to say she talks to the undead.
No, no, just the not dead.
Your friend Sierra from Wales is wondering how you have been during these trying times. I hope you are well, and I'm sending you all my love and best wishes, and you're looking
Oh, darling.
beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I look, I have to say to everybody, I know you all think I'm nuts. These have not been trying times for me, no more trying than life itself. Life presents trying times to us from time to time, doesn't it? Um, I have I have a great attitude of, okay, so let's get on with it. Let's deal with it then. I have known people who have died of COVID. I've known personally a couple who have died of COVID. I've known lots of people, very personal, private friends of mine who've died of cancer. I've known, in fact, a couple of people who've died of influenza. On and on we can go. These are not so much trying times; they're just different times. And as much as awful things happen, good things happen too.
All
But
right.
thank you for asking me. I do appreciate it.
Wayne is on and saying, chin up. Last night was funny and a blessing.
Did you like it? I liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun. Thank you for watching, Wayne.
Judith comments, we all have lessons to learn, don't we?
We certainly do. We really do.
Clara wants to know how old was the boy?
I do believe that he was about 3 or 4 years old. Um, he looked to be about 6 months old. He was a teeny tiny thing. But he apparently was definitely on his way out. I did also find out, because I made it my mission to find out a little bit more about him. He had parents who were very loving and visited him often and regularly. So because that if he hadn't, I would have jumped in there and championed him. The most astounding fact about this place, because all of the children in this place, and there were many children, it was a special hospital, all of the children in this place uh, were definitely, as I've said, severely disabled, but, um, you know, dying or waiting to die. But so many of these children had been abandoned by their parents who never visited them anymore. And before you judge, and before you judge the parents, just think how heartbreaking it must be for parents who have children like this, and they either can't face it, they don't want to face it, they find it too hard to face it. It's easier to bury your head in the sand. Um, but this is where our gentleness comes in. We're not only needing to be gentle to the children and for the children, we're needing to be gentle with the parents who have had this awful, awful thing happen to them too.
Or you might
Chris.
be able to look at this differently. That's a building full of earth angels.
Well, that's exactly, that was what I understood and understand now, not at the time, certainly didn't understand it at the time. But yes, imagine all those wonderful earth angels there.
And
Yes.
all the lessons and love that could be shared, sort of, I don't want to say locked away, but in a way, locked away. All those.
Because there were all of those nurses and all of those doctors who considered it a privilege to be with those children and to help those children. And I'm sure the doctors and nurses around the world who deal with these sorts of things, I'm sure that they are so blessed, and I'm sure that the majority of them feel blessed to be able to give in the way that they do. I mean, aren't our doctors and nurses, aren't they phenomenal? Aren't they fantastic? Don't they do a brilliant, brilliant job?
Well, not only that, the people that don't even rise to the level of doctor or nurse, the aides and the people that come in and out of
Yeah,
the room to take care of the
yeah,
rooms and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I think Claire was asking when she said, "How old was the boy?" was how old was your carrot top charmer?
He was probably, it's hard to say, but probably around sevenish. Fabulous little boy. Fabulous little boy.
Cheryl's asking or commenting, "How wonderful that you saw the beauty in that little boy despite his misshapen form. His spirit was lovely."
How sad for me that it took me a while to see it. Oh boy, I hope I never have to have to look at myself that way again. I think I've learned, really learned. It was a great teaching experience for me, and such a privilege for me.
All right, a little off
It,
topic.
I do just want to say that a lot of people, their actions are, let's say, driven by fear or fear based, and you know I I think that in those moments when I saw this kid with his slobber and his snotty nose and his, and the misshapen and so on, I mean, it's hard to look at those things and you don't want to look at it, because the truth of the matter is that when we face these things, there, but for the grace of God, go I, go you, go all of us. Yes, go for it. Off topic. Moving on.
This is from Leslie. She's hoping that you can spread the word to save the Alpine, Arizona wild horse. They are right alongside two of our Apache reservations. The Forest Service wants to get rid of them, and she's
What?
asking, does Gray Eagle have any advice?
Fight. The word comes right out there. Fight. Boy, oh boy. So, yes, we have to fight. Um, why would they want to get rid of them? Maybe are they damaging the area or something? We don't know the whole story, but still we should fight. They have a right to be there, don't they? While I'm thinking about it, apropos of nothing at all, if Dan is listening, um, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dan. Danny boy, happy birthday to you. There you go, Chris.
Thank you, and many more.
And many more. Yes, I'm sorry. I forgot that bit.
Judith says, we will continue to learn as long as we exist. Sometimes we don't want to learn the lessons we came here to learn.
Well, I think, there's so many of us who say something happens and then it happens again, and that, why me? Why does it keep happening to me? And I do occasionally want to say, because if you don't learn the first time, they'll give you something else, and they'll keep giving you opportunities until you do learn. So we have to, seize the opportunities to learn, and instead of worrying and being disappointed or desperate, or sort of feeling miserable about what's happening to us over the last couple of years. Here is an example. Here's an opportunity for us to say, enough of the feeling sorry for ourselves. We all do that, don't we? We know how to. I'm good at that. But what can we learn? What did we learn? We learned, I think, every one of us sitting here listening to this, every one of us learned that we're stronger than we thought we were. Keep going, Chris.
All right. Andrew has a question for Gray Eagle, but there's a little preamble to it.
Okay.
In metaphysics, psychology, there is an acceptance that because it's necessary to have a filter to the overload of input we might get from our brains, influence of beliefs and ego, etc., that the reality we think we perceive can be said to not actually be reality. Or, to put it another way, a heavily filtered and possibly warped version of reality. Since I'm working on the assumption that gray eagle is consciousness, in parentheses energy, but with no physical brain, how different does gray eagle see what you perceive,
He's
including
so
what's around you on the earth plane?
he's so laughing at this question because Andrew, yeah, I get it. I get exactly what you're saying. The truth of the matter is, this world of ours is an illusion. It is an illusionary world. So, because of the filters that we have, as you spoke about, we don't see it as it is in reality. But it's a very real and a very solid illusion, isn't it? And so we can only go by that. Grey Eagle, having himself been on this earth plane and experienced all of this, knows exactly how to deal with this stuff. Knows exactly how to deal with me. Um, but I think, you know, let me think about this. We have the brain, and then we have the second brain, which most people forget about. And the second brain sits underneath the main brain. Of course, everybody thinks it's not active anymore, don't they? They think it's we don't use that second brain. It's obsolete. But there are many people who believe that that part of, or that part of what's in our skull. Many people believe that that sort of the prehistoric brain, let's call it. Andrew, don't pick at me if I get the words, if I've described it incorrectly, but because I'm not sort of that knowledgeable. But many people think that it is that that second brain, that thing that sits underneath, is uh, is the ancient brain, is where we get all of our knowledge from, particularly our psychic and our intuitive knowledge. There, I'm throwing that all out for you, but we are getting a bit complicated and a bit complex. It is story time, and we're almost at time. So, as much as this is a fascinating subject, we're going to drop it right there. Chris.
Mark says, how rude and presumptuous to expect and demand. You give free of the spirit within you, and Grey Eagle must have had his stern look upon them too. Did he say anything to you? These two
No,
women.
no,
Okay.
because you know, I mean, maybe, we give people the benefit of the doubt. Were they rude? Absolutely. Did they make me feel uncomfortable? No, they irritated me. I'll be honest. I didn't like it. So I guess they did make me feel uncomfortable, and I wished that they would leave my table. But you try to, if you can. I mean, why are people aggressive? I mean, why? They must have been somehow disappointed with the night, so you've got to feel sad for them that they weren't able to be nice people. Some people just aren't nice, also some people are just downright rude and arrogant, and they just can't help it. That's who they are. So we just have to take every person, try to give them the benefit of the doubt, and move on. It just was, it was such a lovely night, and it was such a lovely ball, and everybody was having such a lovely time, as I was. And you know uh, and it's only when I think about how people perceive someone like myself. um, do they think it's my duty to share my experiences with them? Well, actually, I think it's my duty. Um, I'm not sure if it's even a duty. I want to do it. I want to share, but it's not about doing my duty to the people who are here on this earth. It's about doing my duty, or doing my bit, my part, for those in the spirit world. I am their voice first and foremost. Yes, Chris.
Sarah is looking for confirmation. She says, my daughter keeps seeing the date April 19th when at work, processing orders, etc. And then she remembers that it's the date of which her grandmother passed. So is that her grandmother telling her she's around her?
Um, it might well be. It could be that, or it could simply be that she has this inner knowledge, this sensitivity. Maybe she has a great connection to her grandmother. It could be a number of things. But isn't it nice that she, for whatever reason, does remember her grandmother and does remember her grandmother's birthday? So there you have it.
Lorraine saying, tears, beautiful stories. We are spiritual beings living a human experience with earth angels.
We are. Teilhard de Chardin said, I always have to think before I say that name, said, and he's very famous for this quote, we are all spiritual beings having a human experience. I like to add to that quote. So my added would be we are spiritual beings having a human experience, hopefully in a spiritual way. So, we have to keep that in mind. And I agree with you, my darling. Yes, we have some wonderful stories.
Annika says, what a moving story about those little children. What a beautiful gift you have.
Well, actually, in that case, it was me who was given the gift, not them. But I don't think I will ever forget standing holding that little boy's hand. His hand was so frail and tiny, and his skin, I had to be very careful because I found myself stroking his hand at one point, and I had to be very careful because his skin felt like dry parchment. But he held on to my finger so strongly for all that he was so weak. And I don't think I'll ever forget the privilege of being able to sing to him and him with his head turned, with his ear towards me, and no more crying for the moment, and just listening to the lullaby that I was softly singing to him. Even if it was only a moment of respite in his otherwise painful existence, I like to think that I was so fortunate, so lucky. I was given such a gift that day.
Claire is asking, during the bottom brick exercise, when Jen was explaining her personal happenings, what's happening to you? What's happening in your mind? Do you receive visuals or
Oh,
additional information from Grey Eagle to help and guide you?
oh, me. Yeah, I'm listening. I'm listening to Grey Eagle all the time. I'm assessing the situation. I'm able to see beyond what someone is telling me. So when she is talking about her mother, for instance, or her father, I'm able to. There's a knowing sense of why it happened, why these people were like they were. I'm able to get this having a knowing sense of how um, for in this case to how Jen felt when that was happening to her, because we're dealing here with children, small children who are in some way being damaged, very often not deliberately, very often completely the people who are doing the damage are completely unaware that they're doing the damage. But those little drops of poison, those mean-spirited comments or those mean-spirited actions, and we all do it. Don't think I'm sitting here saying I never did it to my child. We hope that we didn't do too much damage. And the good thing about my daughter and I is she's got no problem in telling me exactly what she thinks of me. So so but so often we're human. We make mistakes, and so we do things, we say things, we behave in ways that we perhaps regret later. But nevertheless, those things are little drops of poison, and so I'm able to, as I'm listening to Jen and as she's talking, I'm able to sort of go into that space and go back and see how she was, how she felt, and about her parents as well, what was happening in that time, that time frame that she was talking about. So therefore, I'm able to help and guide her easier and to ask the right questions of her.
Karen says, "Good morning, Rosemary. With pandemics, etc., where many souls transition, many without loved ones present, are there more earthbound or confused souls?"
I don't think so. You mean more than usual? No, I don't think so. I think one of the really good things about our century is that, you know, we know so much more and accept so much more that there is life after death. We have been given the knowledge, we have been given understanding, whether it's through movies or whether it's through TV shows. But it's so much talked about now. I mean, even a decade ago, you couldn't talk about this subject and be taken seriously. So I think that so many more people are aware and understand and do believe and acknowledge the existence of life after death. So I don't think there are as many people saying, no, I don't want to go anywhere. No, don't take me. I don't think there's nearly as much of a struggle. Not that I see that.
Rhonda says, "I work in a medical clinic. Patients ask me all the time if I'm scared working in the clinic. I always tell them, your words, Rosemary, no one goes before their time.
Yeah,
So no, I'm not worried. I have no control over the time I will leave, and I have total trust in God."
brilliant. I love that. I love that, Rhonda. Good for you.
All right, let's see, because we're coming to time. Lorraine says, "You share what you know of the spirit world and Gray Eagle, and that's a gift for us."
Well, it's also a gift for me to be able to do it. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the joy, the wonder, the eye-opening and astounding information that I've gathered over all of the years of my life? Geez, how lucky am I? Okay, Chris, how are we doing?
We're right at time, Rosemary.
Okay. All right. Well, then I would like to say thank you to all of you out there who have joined us this morning. I hope you enjoyed my little story time. I think I'll tell you a spooky story next week. We haven't had one for ages, have we? So I think I'm going to tell a spooky ghost story next week. Why not? I'm laughing because as well as I do, I don't believe in ghosts. But anyway, well, let's make it spooky. All right. So, we shall see you again. We'll definitely be here next Thursday morning for The Spirit World Sees All, Thursday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll be back next week, of course, with another story time. We are also going to be doing at least one, if not two. Are you ready for this, Chris? Um, Off the cuffs. I know we say we do it and sometimes we don't, but we are definitely going to be making an effort to do some off the cuffs because people enjoy it so very much. And we usually do it at night time, so we sort of get different people who are able to join in with us. So thank you, everyone, this morning for joining us. Thank you for your comments. I know you all love me, and I love all of you too. The next off the cuff, I shall be giving out prizes as I did last night. For those of you who missed off the cuff, you can find it. Go to YouTube or go to my Facebook page, or go to rosemaryaltea.com, which is my whatever that is. What is it, Chris?
Well, I always just say go to YouTube because that's your repository of everything you've done.
Okay, go to YouTube then, and you'll see that yesterday I gave out prizes. And those of you who didn't watch, now you're thinking, she gave out prizes. What kind of prizes did she give out? So I'm going to be, every time we do an off the cuff, we're going to have a little competition. Yesterday's competition was oligarch. Couldn't say it for a minute. Oligarch. What does it mean? What is it? What is an oligarch? Or what do I mean by oligarch? Anyway, we finally got there in the end. I did have to tell you all, but some people got it half right. You got lots of prizes. So we gave out lots of prizes yesterday. So every time we do an off the cuff, I think I'm going to give a prize. I'm not going to tell you what it is. If you saw it yesterday, you'll know what it is. And if you didn't see it, you'll soon enough know if you join us for an off the cuff. So thank you all for joining us. We'll see you again, hopefully, on our next off the cuff. Keep checking with our website, rosemaryaltea.com. If you would like to go there, you can see some you can see some bottom brick stuff. I've got off the cuff and bottom brick all muddled up together. Maybe we'll do one of those as well. And until I see you again, everybody, thank you for joining us. So sorry. Turn that off. Please, everybody, have a very, very blessed rest of the day and have a very blessed weekend, everybody.
We're going out with music. Bye, everyone.